August 30th Planning Commission meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Sattler.
Present.
Vice Chair Borders.
Here.
Commissioner Aswine.
Here.
Commissioner Monroy. Here. Commissioner Salerno.
Here.
Commissioner Stowell.
Here.
Commissioner Tingle.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. Before I open the public comment, I would like to welcome our newest member, Hope Tingle, has just joined us and puts us back to full staff. And welcome, Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matters that are not specifically included in the agenda as an action item. Is there any public comment at this time? Seeing none, for possible action, approval of minutes from the July 26, 2017 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes of July 26th.
You have a motion from Commissioner Aswine. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Borders. All in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Modification of agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relating to an item on the agenda at any time. Is there any changes?
Recommend no changes. Take the orders as they appear.
Disclosures. Any member of the commission may wish to explain any contact with an applicant or the public regarding an item on the agenda or business of the commission. I'm sorry? Should I re-say? Okay. Any member of the commission may wish to explain any contact with an applicant or the public regarding an item on the agenda or business of the commission. Is there any disclosures? I don't know that it would matter. I believe it's the third item is my wife works for and has for many years for Greenhouse Garden Center that is right along that fence line, whatever, sharing property. I don't know if that's something I need to state or not.
No, I think that's fine. My understanding is she's not right adjacent to it. But in any event, there's no conflict that would make you abstain.
Clarify that. Thank you. For public hearings, Schedule F1, for discussion only. Presentation by representatives of the Nevada Charter of the American Planning Association on the February 2017 Nevada Planning Guide, Nevada Charter of the American Planning Association, Nevada Leadership Program, University Center for Economic Development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, let me briefly introduce to Lee Plemmel for the record. For this item, we have Julie Hunter's up there and ready to give the brief presentation for you regarding this planning guide that I don't know how long it's been done, but No, there was one last year, but this is the latest version of it. It's a real great document. Julie comes from us. She works for the Washoe County Health District as in the Air Quality Management Division, but she's here representing the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association as their planning official development officer. So that's why she's here today to talk to you a little bit about the planning guide. So thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you, members of the board. Thank you for having me again. Well, my name is Julie Hunter, for the record, and I'm the senior planner for the Air Quality Management Division at the Health District, as well as a newly elected Planning Official Development Officer. Public health and planning are really important, so it's really exciting to have a seat at the table as the Health District. Really what we're here to do is on behalf of the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association and the University Nevada Center of Economic Development, it's our pleasure to give you the newly revised Nevada Planning Guide, and that's this year, 2017. Last revision, very long time ago. So the planning guide was developed over the course of about 2 years with 7 volunteers involved in the development of the guide. I had the pleasure of being the lead of this project, and I learned greatly a lot about the wide world of planning and had a lot of guidance from Candace, so thank you, Candace. The mission of the American Planning Association is to provide elected and appointed officials, government representatives, staff, members of the public, and private sector with professional development and educational opportunities as it pertains to the wider world of planning. As a Planning Official Development Officer, or PODO, which is much easier and kind of fun to say, I serve as a reference person to elected and appointed officials to help coordinate the exchange of information and ideas and to provide training materials such as this guide. This includes providing materials, providing training opportunities, workshops, social events, and special tracks at chapter conferences, and partnering with programs developed by universities such as the Economic Development Center and the Nevada Leadership Program, which you'll find some more inside of the guide. The Economic Development Center and the Nevada chapter of the American Planning Association has developed a partnership over the years to provide professional development opportunities and information, including this guide to those who are interested in learning more about planning. The Nevada Leadership Program has a very similar mission as the American Planning Association, providing opportunities. And as a PODO, if you're interested in a specific planning topic or hearing from a subject matter expert, please feel free to contact myself, and I can set up workshops, luncheons, social events. And like I said, our chapter conference is coming up this October here in Carson City, which is very exciting. So inside the guide, you'll also find additional information, including professional development opportunities that are coming up. The annual conference is October 1st through the 4th. An upcoming one-day global climate change summit, and that is hosted by the Nevada Leadership Program, and that is on September 23rd. And some background information on the University Center for Economic Development, and that is Fred Steinman's program. You'll find his business card in there as well if you have questions about that. And Candace did let me know that the member form but I think you're all members, which Lee just told me, so that's exciting. So my apologies, we'll change that. The website to find that form is on the first page of the planning guide. And so with that, I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
Actually, I do have one question. I'm not sure, I haven't had an opportunity to look through the material, but do you address, and I know Lee's going to think me crazy, but do you address water issues, environmental issues as part of this planning document, or is this separate and apart?
You know, that's a good question because it's very more wider planning. We have talked about adding chapters such as environmental or transportation specific. We're talking to Lee Gibson with RTC. This we're kind of thinking is a living document. So as people would like air quality issues, I would love to see some planning go into this planning guide on that. So nothing specific. Lots of you'll find NRS codes pertaining to land use planning and things like that. But if you're interested in us adding a chapter, I'd be happy to work with you to develop something like that. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Thank you for having me.
Anyone from the public wish to comment on that or anything like that? Moving on, F2, SUP-17-093, for possible action to consider a request for the renewal of a special use permit for Rogers Media Company property owner William Kruger and CS Coffee to continue an existing billboard sign on property zone general commercial located at 800 Old Clear Creek Road, APN 009-302-09. Ms. Green?
Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager, presenting for Kathy Green. Okay, so section or 4.8.3 of the development standards states that the special use permit that's issued for billboards automatically expires 5 years after the SUP is issued. So that's a codified regulation. This billboard was approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2007, thus it's been in place for 10 years. This is one of the 5-year reviews, so they're seeking another special use permit, which would be good for 5 years. We have not received any complaints on this billboard. The staff has gone through the 7 required findings of fact necessary for issuance of a special use permit, and we were able to make those findings in the affirmative. So staff is recommending that this special use permit be issued for another 5 years and would come back before you in 2022. That's fairly brief. I do have a map up on the screen. This particular billboard is located on the south side of Highway 50, north side of Clear Creek Road. Here's a picture of the billboard if you were able to go out there and you weren't sure which one was ours. There's a couple Douglas County ones. There's some on tribal land, but this is the Carson City billboard. And again, it's just this is the 5 years is up, and they're seeking another special use permit for another 5 years. William Kugler, who is the applicant, is present, and I'll answer questions.
Any questions for staff?
So they've met all the conditions of the original permit?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Here we have the applicant. Hi, is there anything you would like to add to the presentation or whatever at this point?
No, my name's William Kugler. I'm the property owner. I reviewed the report. It looks fine to me, so I'm in concurrence with it. So,
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Any comments from the public on this item? If not, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or recommendation or a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
This billboard is 10 years old. Is the lighting system that's on this billboard also 10 years old? And is there any review process to look at more efficient, better lighting, more dark sky compliant, or whatever else we could do to help make the fingerprint of this billboard less in the evening hours when the lights are all on?
This particular billboard, and this was mentioned in the staff report, utilizes an uplight. You all had a billboard not so long ago on Highway 50, and you'll recall we did get complaints from neighbors about the light shining in their window, and you did put conditions in that case to have the lights modified, and they put actually a shield on them to address the intrusion, if you will, onto a residential property. Given that this is not intruding on any properties and we're not getting complaints, staff has not recommended any modifications to the lighting. Mr. Chair, if I may, I think just at the risk of being long-winded, I think Commissioner Border's point is a really good one and a really good reason to have this review, so that if we do have situations like we did on Highway 50 where there was a problem, we're in a position to address it. But in this case, there haven't been any problems identified.
Just for my clarification, I drove up there and I believe you pull up in a driveway and there's some residents and like storage area. Is that the one right above that? Hope is. That's the one. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Thank you. Again, back for any further comments or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion
Thank you.
to approve SUP-17-093, a special use permit request from Rogers Media Company, owner William Kugler and CS Coffee, to allow the continuation of an existing billboard sign on property zoned general commercial located at 800 Old Clear Creek Road, assessors parcel number 009-302-09, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
We have a motion from Commissioner Eswine. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Borders. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Moving on, F3, SUP-17-107, for possible action to consider a request for a special use permit for Hannafenberger Architects, property owners 340 Bettis LLC, Robert Gindet, to allow an 8-foot tall fence along the north property line in the rear yard setback of property zone single-family 12,000, located at 340 Betts Street, APN 0090031-20.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. When I started to write this report, I sat down and I thought I was writing a report for denial, and I didn't. Because I was thinking it was a variance, because typically when we have a change to a dimensional criteria like height, it's handled through a variance. That's not the case in Carson City. In the case of a fence and the height of a fence, it's handled through a special use permit, which is a different set of findings. And those findings speak mostly to the appropriateness of the site. In fact, when the applicant first came in, he came in with an application for a variance. And I said, oh, no, it's a special use permit. And they came back with a special use permit. So in going through the 7 findings for the special use permit and looking at the impacts, traffic impacts, noise, vibrations, adequacy of utilities, I said that for you, Hope, all those findings, staff was able to make the findings in the affirmative. What we have is a fence that's proposed along a northern property line. The fence will be 8 feet tall, 330 feet long. The property to the north is actually zoned industrial. It's limited industrial. The subject property is zoned for single-family 12,000. So typically, single-family and industrial are not necessarily compatible uses. The property to the north that's zoned limited industrial it's essentially vacant right now. It's a code enforcement case. It's been a code enforcement case since December due to trash, debris, weeds, and the like. Had this purely been a fence request because of the code enforcement, I'm not certain I would support it. However, because you have the limited industrial zoning to the rear, which means it's going to be appropriate for industrial uses that can have impacts that aren't necessarily compatible with single-family residential, I think the fence is appropriate. So again, you are authorized to issue a special use permit upon making the 7 required findings of fact in the affirmative. Staff has reviewed those findings in the staff report, and we've made them in the affirmative subject to conditions. The applicants, Robert Gint and Darren Berger, are present, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff?
I have one.
Commissioner
I think you put it up there. I was asking about the property just to the west, and it's single-family 12,000 also.
Correct.
Applicant want to come forward?
For the record, my name's Darren Berger. I'm an architect. I've been hired by Mr. Gint to assist him with this process. We've reviewed the staff report and agree with the terms and conditions of the staff report and look forward to commencing with this project and getting it done.
Any questions for the applicant?
There are now 2 houses on the property. What's going to happen with those 2 houses?
That's correct. The one residence, the newer one, is going to remain, and the other residence, which is the older one, that one's going to be torn down and removed.
Just in the staff report, it talked about drainage issues. So is the fence, the proposed fence, is there going to be any room, or is it going to be flush to the ground?
No, absolutely. That was one of the conditions of the staff report, so we'll make sure if there's some sort of natural swell or drainage going through there that we'll keep that fence up so that the water can flow through there. Absolutely.
Commissioner.
I was out there the other day and I looked at it and I noticed that there are posts already in place. Have they been there for a long time, or what's the situation on the fact that those posts are already there?
Yeah.
It looks like it's the ones that are planned for the fence.
Yeah. That's right. Mr. Gant thought, with no harm, that you could build a fence without a permit, and he quickly realized that, no, you can't do that without a permit. So he happened to get red tagged, and as soon as he got red tagged, he called me, and so I've been trying to assist him shepherding through this process. Of course, he was, hopeful. He didn't want to rip the post out. We just stopped work until we could get approval through this process. So it was an innocent mistake that he had made, and we're just trying to resolve it through this.
I noticed also that you're going to be using lattice in the upper portion of the fence. What's the material of the lattice?
Well, I think we'll either use a redwood or a cedar product.
The little 1/4 by inch and a half?
Yeah, the 1 by 1/8. Yeah. I think it's a prefabricated type lattice, and I want to say they're either 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide, and they're about 1/8 inch thick. But it's a prefabricated sheet, probably a 8 by 10 or a 4 by 8 sheet, like you would buy a piece of plywood that we would cut and put into a cedar or redwood frame.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mike? Having driven up there, I can see why he probably wanted to put the fence in. I was just up there the other day, and I think there's some car parts and all kinds of stuff in that lot next door, and I guess that's a problem for staff as well, so, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thanks.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion or a motion.
The only concern I have that it will set a precedent for having taller fences. Would staff like to talk to that?
Again, that's why I started with, I shared your concern when I initially sat down, because my brain immediately went to variance. And I thought, well, how do you make a case for a variance? But then I realized we're not making a case for a variance. You're looking at 7 findings of fact regarding the SUP. So I think when you actually go through each of those findings, you have to identify, can it be made or can it not? For example, if I'll go back to the zoning, because the zoning is really what persuaded me. If this was SF12, let's say, and Commissioner Borders asked, what's the property to the west? If this fence line was proposed along the west, between 2 identically zoned pieces of property, I'm not certain I could support it. I didn't consider it, but I'm not certain I could support it. I think because the property to the north is light or limited industrial, in general, uses in limited industrial are not compatible with single-family residential. Or I don't want to say not compatible, but there's an opportunity for a lack of compatibility, a bigger opportunity there than if you have 2 similarly zoned pieces of property. And so in large part, that's why in this case, I could make the findings. But in fairness, I'm not going to say that every single fence will be able to make the findings.
And we just had a situation last month or month before with a fence that was going to involve 6 foot or 4 foot, I think, and then they had wire. So, I mean, we reacted to the location, needs, whatever, and you just handle them each as they come, I guess. So, thank you. Mr. Phillip.
I would just like to see if we could, if the Planning Commission wants to approve the special use permit, that we amend it and have some kind of language to document that the property will be brought into conformance with the SF 12,000 zoning district. In other words, that second dwelling has to come down. And I don't know if that would be within a year or within 6 months, but since it is a special use permit, I'd like to see if that could be added to the motion.
But do the same folks own both dwellings?
Yes, it's the same parcel. There are 2 houses on the lot.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the applicant currently has a parcel map pending before the city, and in order for that parcel map to be approved, they do have to demolish I want to call it the octagon. So there's a lot in play here. The fence is the piece that's before the Planning Commission. If the commission feels it's necessary to address land use as part of the findings, then it would be appropriate. But I do want to let you know that there are other things under consideration that are forcing the demolition of that structure.
That's sufficient then. Thank you. Any more comments or open for a motion?
I do have a question.
Commissioner
For staff, is there a height limitation on the height of fences in industrial zones?
Yes, and it's actually still 6 feet.
It is, okay.
Yeah, and this has come up before. There's 6-foot fences are permitted anywhere, but or allowed per the height of the zoning, or they can meet the permitted height of the zoning. So actually, in commercial districts, anywhere there's 0 setbacks,
Right.
that would permit a higher fence than 6 feet by right, because because you are permitted to go up to the, like,
Height of a building.
the height of a building and that. So, but in this case, even on the limited industrial side, there are setbacks to the residential, so it's in play here. But there could be places in commercial where it could be more than 6 feet without a special use permit.
Thank you.
Mr. Salerno.
I think that there's reason to approve this simply because it's residential against industrial property, and therefore I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve SUP-17-107, a special use permit request to allow for an 8-foot fence in the rear yard on property zone single-family 12,000 square feet, located at 340 Betts Street, APN 009-031-20, based on findings and the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
We have a motion for Commissioner Salerno. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second for Commissioner Stowell. All in favor? Oh,
We're not certain you called for public comment on this item?
I did.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, call for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Staff report.
I have a couple items just to go over really quickly, items that have been before you in the past. Actually, let me start with Hope. Can you give them an update on the Builders Association
In what?
zone change PUD?
Oh, that, okay,
at the action at the board.
Lee was on vacation, so I went solo on the appeal of the Planning Commission's, well, it was 4 things, actually. Okay, the PUD on the Builders Association, you all had recommended approval with the single-family residential being an allowed use, not special or conditional use, and with no child care. Prior to the meeting, the Builders Association asked to add even more uses than they had asked of you, and one of the options for the board was to change the list of uses with the PUD. So the board most notably did allow the child care as a use, a conditional use. Let's see what else happened. They had the introduction of an ordinance to rescind the resolution of intent, and they did vote for that. They had the special appeal of your decision to deny the special, it was actually a tie, it was a 2-2 vote, regarding the special use permit for the child care facility, and the board voted to allow the child care facility with no Saturday hours, with the limited outdoor hours that you had contemplated and that the applicant brought before you, and with a request that the staff conduct a review after 3 years from the date of the reapproval, and that the staff identified any lack of compliance, that we bring it to the Planning Commission for its review. And on the variance on parking, you had recommended denial, and the Board of Supervisors, in considering an appeal of your decision, overturned your decision and allowed the on-street parking.
Okay, I just have a couple more items, just talking about to talk a little bit about the retail marijuana ordinances for zoning. We had brought those initially and gone through and had them adopted significantly as recommended by you, but actually the Board of Supervisors has removed limited industrial from the area where there would be any facilities allowed. If you recall, that's where a lot of the complaints were coming from, a lot of people that were showing up. We're actually reworking. We went to first reading, and we're working on it, and we're going to go back to first reading on September 21st. The other thing was when that was not a rush, because the other thing they did was delay its implementation for retail establishments till January 1st of 2018. So we're going to clean it up a bit, deal with some grandfathering issues potentially as a result of the ordinance, and come back on September 21st with that. And then the APA, the Nevada chapter of the APA conference that's in Carson City coming up in October. I know I've sent an email out earlier, and then I was out of town for a while, so I'm going to follow back up with y'all. We're going to get that organized so that Rhea in our office can sign everybody up who wants to go to the conference.
Lee, is there a draft agenda we could review yet?
I looked online the other day and didn't see any.
I know they're still kind of working on the sessions a bit, so we can get that out as soon as possible. So we can talk about that. If you have, trying to pick a day, which day to go type of thing, I could see what Okay, yep, I'll see what information I can get for you.
And I think when we went up to the lake, didn't we just go for one day? Or did we go both days?
Well,
we went for
I
both
think it was
days?
up to you. Yeah, I think it was up to you again.
Right.
It'll be a little bit easier to get to, and even if it's a morning each day, that's fine. So, it's very inexpensive, very relatively inexpensive to sign you up. So it's not that big a deal. So if you can make any of it, I just suggest signing up and go to as much as you can. So I'll follow up with you all on
You
that.
still have your golf bag?
I won a silent auction golf bag a couple years ago. That's right.
Really nice golf bag.
Where are they going to hold it? Where's the conference going to be held?
The Nugget.
Yeah, I think they have some other, in the Nugget is going to be the primary place.
Okay.
I don't know if they're looking at some other rooms in the area to add to that, but the base is going to be the Nugget. So, and then just finally talking about the applications we've received for next month for the September 27th meeting. Again, back to a relatively light agenda. We have a variance for a single-family detached garage setback in a single-family 1-acre zoning, and special use permit for an 8-unit apartment on Nichols Lane.
And review the Maverick sign.
Yeah, and then those are new applications, and then there's the Maverick freeway sign that was required to have a review. So again, that'll be on the agenda. You have a chance, but you can look at the Maverick sign as you drive by, thinking about that for the next agenda. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any commissioner reports or comments? Commissioner Stoll.
I know at some point you're going to be coming back in terms of SB, I can't remember the name now, the group home thing. 417, 470, whatever. So a question, and this would just be sort of information, discussion, not necessarily for action, but when we talked about the two houses on the property that we reviewed tonight, and I was looking through the code, and I was trying to find accessory dwelling unit. I couldn't find it. You have guest housing, it looks like, but you don't seem to have accessory dwelling units as allowed in Carson City for rent as well as for relatives. And I was just wondering, and again, this might be something that you want to bring in when you're talking about other housing issues, if that might be something we could talk about, because again, Reno still doesn't allow ADUs. Douglas County has forever. And it might be something that I think would be, there may be some opposition, but I think it would be very positive to look at and at least to consider in terms of future code amendments. So I just thought at the appropriate time, maybe when we're talking about other housing issues, to look at that, because I was surprised I couldn't find anything in terms of ADUs in the code. Thanks.
It's been a while since we had the discussion on guest housing when actually it's been in the 15 years since I've been here that has been added even to allow guest buildings with kitchens. So it was even more strict before, and that's as far at the time that we could get it. And there was a lot of discussion about that, but the decision at that time was to have them not for rent, that they had to be for the family and guest only. But yeah, with some housing discussion at some point, that would be it's maybe a time to bring that up again. Yeah, thanks.
We've had several of those over the last couple of years, mostly south, that were, usually it was parents or whatever were moving in, and they just made it, like you said, it could be family only, not for rent, yada, yada, if it was ever sold.
I was just going to bring that, the last one we did was, and I guess my question is how do you know whether somebody's renting it or not, so what difference does that make, whether it's rental or for a family member? I mean, maybe the family member's renting it, so just.
That's rhetorical, right?
Yes, it is rhetorical. But I would just like to second what Candace said, that I think that it's something that we probably should look at. It's a big issue all around the country at this point, and especially in places where there's a tight housing market. And I think it's something that we should look at.
Any other comments? Seeing that there is no public, I guess there won't be any public comments, so I'll take a motion for adjournment. So